All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for today's webinar on the Apple Legacy, Drexel's Innovation and Education. My name is Kelly Lowerson, and I'm a Director of Alumni Relations here at Drexel. This webinar is really a celebration. We're celebrating the kickoff to Alumni Weekend. Hopefully, we will see some of you at our in-person events across campus in Philadelphia this weekend. We're celebrating the 40th anniversary of the Drexel Microcomputer Project with Apple, where Drexel became the first university to require all students to own a personal computer. More on that in a minute. And we're also celebrating a few of the ways that Drexel continues to be an innovator in the education space today. So I hope you leave today's session with a lot of Drexel Dragon pride. But our agenda for the next hour, we're going to start by providing you with some context on the microcomputer project with Apple. But we'll spend the bulk of our time hearing about 3 innovative initiatives coming out of Drexel today. And that will be presented in almost like TED Talk format, so quick, informative, and engaging. 2 housekeeping notes. As you can see, presentation is being recorded, and the recording will be shared with you and all registrants in the follow-up email. Second, as you are already so nicely doing, please use the chat throughout the presentation. Perhaps you want to share your memories of getting that first Macintosh. I know a few of you already still have yours, or you can use the chat to ask questions. We're not going to have time to do a full dedicated Q&A, but the presenters might have time to answer 1 or 2 questions following their presentations. So with that, I am thrilled to turn it over to Youngmoo Kim, who is our Vice Provost of University and Community Partnerships, and he is going to help us make the connection from 1984 to 2024. Youngmoo?
Thanks, Kelly. Good afternoon, everyone, or good morning or good evening, as the case may be, wherever you're tuning in from. My name is Youngmoo Kim. I'm Vice Provost of University and Community Partnerships, also a professor of electrical and computer engineering. I also have the great privilege of being an Apple Distinguished Educator. I've been involved in the Apple education community for quite some time. So let me take you back 40 years ago to 1984, right? It's the very early days of the personal computer. Most households certainly don't have one, and hardly anyone brought a computer to college. Today, it's very easy to see the prescience of the Drexel Microcomputing Program, but it was an almost unbelievably bold initiative and risky one at that in 1984. Our dear departed colleague, Dave Jones, who went on to serve as Dean of the Pennoni Honors College, captured the story of the Drexel Microcomputing Project in a wonderful documentary that's titled Going National. And I want to show you or share with you a brief clip from this film.
Apple Computer Company was concerned about making their own announcement of their own equipment, and certainly that's their prerogative. The secrecy was something that has been totally contrary to the traditional academic process, and yet something which we felt was worth the cost in order for the benefit of having the important long-term growth capacities of this exciting new machine.
January 24th, Apple Computer will introduce Macintosh. And you'll see why 1984 won't...
Last year, you may have noted the San Francisco Chronicle referred to us as Drexel University, prestigious science and technology school in Philadelphia. Yesterday, Newsweek simply wrote, Drexel University, where Macintoshes will be distributed to nearly 2,000 students. It's no longer necessary to mention the location. We're apparently on the map.
We appointed a faculty committee representing every college, and they wrote out their RFP, and they picked Apple's machine. But we think this is a very good deal for our freshmen. The price to the students and to those members of faculty who seek to buy one will be $1,000 plus the sales tax, a little insurance coverage if they want it.
This is the Apple Macintosh right here. Weighs about 20 pounds. The programs are stored on a 3.5-inch disc.
Is Drexel starting a trend here today?
We think we've already started a trend.
So that is a full hour-long documentary, and it's now available on YouTube, thanks to our libraries. I think Kelly will share the link to that video for any of you who want to take some time to go through it. It really is a wonderful time capsule. So back in 1984, Drexel saw that everyone would need a computer and technology skills. So I see this anniversary not as just an anniversary of this particular initiative, but really of Drexel's commitment to what's now called digital equity, that everyone deserves access and opportunity, especially towards technologies that are defining the future of our society. Today, the digital divide remains one of the most pressing issues, right? Computing is literally rewiring our future. And while universities are digital haves, too many people in this world, even just a few blocks away from our campus, remain digital have-nots. Drexel has long been a pioneer in digital inclusion, and we're leading efforts to ensure that everyone has access to technology, training, and education. In 2013, as an example, with the generous support of trustee Jeffrey Beachel, we started the Beachel Family Learning Center at the Dornsife Center for Neighborhood Partnerships, a hub for digital upskilling. It's since served hundreds of local residents. At the onset of the pandemic, we launched Drexel's Digital Navigators program, which was one of the first in the nation. We've since helped hundreds of Philadelphians obtain low or no cost home broadband access and distributed over 600 free computers, laptops, and refurbished desktop computers to our Philadelphia neighbors and organizations. And then there's TechServe, an amazing student organization which has also distributed hundreds of free devices locally and even abroad to those in need. For these and many other efforts, I'm really proud to say that Drexel is seen as a national leader for digital inclusion. So as we celebrate this anniversary, I'm trying to connect things that happened 40 years ago to the great work and innovation that's happening today in 2024. And I want to use this opportunity to keep reminding ourselves, right, how innovation drives our even deeper commitment to community and to society. For me, it's a reminder to keep taking big swings at Drexel. Taking big swings goes against a lot of the herd mentality of higher education. But I believe, and I know a lot of our colleagues believe, Drexel is a different kind of university, one that challenges conventional wisdom to find new and better solutions for our students and for our world. And that, to me, is what Drexel is really all about. So to give more examples or really kind of make that case for us, we have put together a program of 3, I think, extraordinary presentations and an extraordinary group of presenters. They're going to talk about some of the cutting edge work. Some of it involves technology, some of it doesn't. Not everything is tech related, right? But where we're trying to apply an innovative process, the great knowledge that we've developed at Drexel, and then put it to greater use for society and for our Philadelphia community and communities globally as well. So I'm going to kick it off, or sort of hand it off to colleagues from the College of Nursing and Health profession to talk about the Disaster Simulation Lab. So please welcome my colleagues, Helen Tang, lead faculty member for the Simulation Labs, and Kate Morse, Assistant Dean of Experiential Learning and Innovation from the College of Nursing and Health Professions. Helen and Kate, welcome.
Thank you, Dr. Kim, for the introduction. I will share my screen. Can everyone see?
Looks good.
Okay. So in this presentation, we will be showing a video of students working with high fidelity mannequins and live actors in a disaster setting. At the Center of Interprofessional Clinical Simulation and Practice, we are constantly innovating to harness the power of simulation to transform learners to become fully fledged healthcare professionals. Imagine, if you will, you are a new graduate nurse working in a large urban city hospital. On your drive to work, you hear on the radio that a state of emergency has been declared, and hospitals should be ready to receive large volumes of patients who are expected to present with a cluster of symptoms of unknown origin. All the patients will require high levels of care, the general population are asked to stay at home. Only essential workers are allowed on the roads. As you park your car, you feel anxious, you feel your heart racing, you're worried about what you may face today. As soon as you clocked in for your shift in the emergency department, you are immediately grabbed by the charge nurse and assigned to care for 4 critically ill patients. In those first few moments, it is hard to hear, process, let alone prioritize which patients you need to see first. Then you close your eyes and take a deep breath. You remember back to your training in the simulation center at Drexel College of Nursing and Health Professions. You remember being coached by the embedded ER charge nurse in the disaster simulation when you were a nurse receiving patients from a mass casualty train collision. You were shown, even in high-stress environments, you are still to methodically assess your patients, note their relevant signs and symptoms. You learn to quickly develop a nursing care plan and provide patients the care they need most at that time. You practice teamwork to treat the most critically ill patients. You were able to deliver quality healthcare under the least optimal situations. You open your eyes and you're now ready to start your shift. Here at Drexel Nursing, we have always believed all nurses need to be prepared for the unexpected. Our pre-licensure undergraduate nursing students have been participating in a disaster simulation since before the COVID-19 pandemic. This essential simulation is part of the Population Health Concepts course, a core clinical course in the nursing curriculum. During the COVID-19 pandemic, we had to be innovative in thinking about how can we run the disaster simulation while still meeting COVID-19 restrictions. Using high-fidelity mannequins and live actors as standardized patients, we were able to minimize the number of people in the room. We controlled for the element of time and pace for the entry of new victims into the scenario to create that sense of urgency. We continually seek students' feedback on their simulation experiences and respond to their input. We have added to a part 2 to the simulation. Students now re-enter the simulation scenario after they have been debriefed from their first attempt. And students wanted that additional time in the simulation so that they may apply what they learned from part 1. And as a result, they leave the simulation experience feeling much more confident in their clinical decision-making and the care that they provided. And we prepare our students for this immersive simulation by scaffolding knowledge acquisition and built-in opportunities for deliberate practice of their skills leading up to the day of the simulation.
We do all this with simulation-based education. And simulation-based education is really the perfect marriage between technology, high-fidelity mannequins, high-fidelity cameras, and the human element, standardized patients, faculty who are trained to work with students to help them develop their skill set. And the what of this is a 3-step process. And I'm going to walk you through that process because it's critically important to creating a successful simulation for our learners. And by a successful simulation, I mean one that engages the learners, helps them question how they view things, how they make decisions, and hopefully come out transformed and ready to practice in their specialty. So as faculty, we take very deliberate steps, and part of those steps are called 1, a pre-briefing. And a pre-briefing is a time when we as faculty draw in and engage our students with what is about to happen, which means that we prepare them for what's coming. We talk about expectations and roles, and we set up a clear path so that they understand and they're not surprised in the way that would feel being tricked or unfair. We can't change the fact that the clinical situations, and as you saw in the video, those clinical situations might be challenging and uncertain for them, and that's okay, because we are okay if learners are uncertain. And as Helen describes, as they walk into real clinical practice, their heart rates are up, their palms are a little sweaty, and they have to imagine how to manage their own emotions. And we talk about that in pre-briefing and leverage that to engage in learning. And it also matches the level of emotional engagement that they will have in their clinical lives. So if we learn in those spaces, we're much more able to function in those spaces in real clinical life. So pre-briefing is an important time that happens prior to every simulation. The simulation itself is designed utilizing different modalities that may have very high fidelity, so a high level of technology. So learners can, as you saw, do CPR on mannequins where they're doing chest compressions when someone doesn't have an adequate heart rate. Or they're able to give medications and practice skills without harm to patients and without harm to themselves if an error is made. We also have standardized patients who are engaged in our disaster sim that help move the story along and engage the learners. So that case is carefully crafted in order to be scaffolded so that the learners are ready to be in that space. They can practice their skills, try on new leadership skills with support in the room from an embedded coach. And those simulation cases happen throughout their curriculum at different levels, going from the simple to more complex as they become more experienced. All simulation cases are followed by a reflective debriefing, and this is the humanistic part. And that humanistic part is helping the learners make sense of what just happened, to ask them to engage in critical self-reflection so we can understand their thinking and support the good thinking and massage new ways of thinking about things and helping them scaffold new mental models to care for complex patients. This combination of infusing technology into simulation is a critical piece of our learning, and all of this is underpinned by psychological safety. And psychological safety simply means that our learning spaces are ready and available for learners to take interpersonal risks. What it is not, psychological safety is not a soft, warm bunny where we never have hard conversations or we never challenge people's thinking, because that's part of what our job is in simulation, is to help people grow and develop. So what psychological safety is, and it is our responsibility as faculty to create and maintain this during the entire process, is to allow our learners to take risks, to try on their new role, to ask questions, to reveal that they don't know the answers, to view failure or mistakes in simulation as a learning process, and to not be afraid to ask for help from their faculty.
Experiential learning in a psychologically safe environment, coupled with meaningful debriefings, allow us to meet our students where they are. When they join the healthcare workforce as professionals, they will be prepared when the unknown strikes. It is our moral obligation as healthcare educators to weave simulation into the fabric of learning for all healthcare students, so that they may feel ready to lean into the discomfort of organized chaos and provide effective humane care. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Helen and Kate, for that amazing presentation. I'm going to invite everyone in the audience, if you have questions, to put them into the chat. We'll try to get to as many as possible. I'm going to just ask you, as we're getting some questions in, you know, the simulation lab is actually physically moved, right, into a new space, into the new health sciences building. Can you just give our alums who may not have seen it a taste of what that's like as well?
Absolutely. So we are delighted to be in our new house, which is close to 22,000 square feet and is 3 large areas. So one, a 30-bed skills lab for fundamental training, a 18-bed skills lab that we use and share with our health profession colleagues. And then we have a 14-bed standardized patient lab where they can see patients in the outpatient setting. And those would be our standardized patients. 2 fully operational operating theaters for our nurse anesthetist colleagues. And we share and invite our College of Medicine colleagues to come use those spaces as well, and 9 hospital rooms and a variety of little smaller skills rooms. So it allows us to support our learners to move through. And I should add, we have a community apartment now as well, so they can see people at home, see people in the office, see people in the hospital, and see people back at home is our aspirational goal now that we're in our new house.
Wonderful. So two quick questions that have come in.
Mhm.
I'll ask you both of them. First, let's see, Robert was curious how simulation learning at Drexel compares or contrasts to our peers, those at Penn, Temple, and Jeff. And then Heather was asking if you can explain what a standardized patient is.
Sure. Helen, would you like to take one of those?
I can take the standardized patient one. I think you're probably have better knowledge about what's available out there in terms of simulation centers.
Go ahead.
Oh, so a standardized patient is, so we can use mannequins or live actors as standardized patients. Basically, they provide us, they are given a particular scenario and a script so that they are embedded into the simulation to provide our students with that patient care experience. And you saw that in the clip where you saw primarily our mannequins, our high fidelity mannequins being the standardized patients. And some of the pictures you saw some of the standard live actors being standardized patients as well.
Yes. And I would say that simulation across the country in all health professions has become woven into the fabric, and every school is at a slightly different place of how embedded it is into the curriculum. I think we have probably a quite remarkable physical capacity now because of our new center. So I think that is a real plus. And we also have the physical setup that we are down the hall from our College of Medicine colleagues, and we have multiple other professions that live in our college. So it makes it easier as we try and plan interprofessional learning activities in simulation, which is a really important piece for people to learn how to work in teams. I think that is one of our unique features at Drexel. And as we learn to figure out how to do that is a substantial advantage to learners. We, of course, have a strong commitment to how we as faculty interact with our students, how we create psychological safety, how we engage with our learners, and we adhere to a debriefing model called Debriefing with Good Judgment.
Thank you, Helen and Kate. That was amazing. I'm going to draw a connection from 1984 till now. I mean, back in 1984, this idea of a graphical user interface, or this kind of WYSIWYG, right? What you see is what you get. Oh, I'm typing like I would on a sheet of paper, and it's going to look like what I will print out, right? Is an exact metaphor for simulation, right? That previous to, high quality simulation, you would have to study these things in concept or have an actor and do things. The technology now allows you to be a lot more experiential with it. And of course, that's a Drexel distinctive aspect as well. So I see this as being connected and of course, a highly experiential aspect of any kind of healthcare training. All right, thank you so much. All right, I know we're short on time, so I am going to introduce our second presenter, also on an amazing topic, one that's certainly at the forefront of news and sort of technology advancement today. I'm sure you've heard of deep fakes, right? That's the use of AI or computing technology to generate things that did not happen or to alter things, right, that may not have happened in the way that they're presenting. Well, we happen to have one of the world's experts on this topic, and that's, of course, my colleague in electrical and computer engineering who runs the Multimedia and Information Security Lab. Please welcome Dr. Matt Stamm.
Thank you. Give me a moment to share my my screen. Oops, sorry, it's defaulted to the wrong slide. Here we go. All right. Thank you guys for listening to for attending this talk. I'm going to talk about an area you might not have heard of, something called multimedia forensics. And these are AI-based techniques that we can use to combat fake media, misinformation, and a host of new information security challenges. So to kind of talk about what this is, I think in the news, it's become very apparent that there are a variety of new information security challenges created by fake, manipulated, and AI-generated images and video, and increasingly audio. A really recent example of this is a campaign ad used by the DeSantis campaign in the Republican presidential primary. Here, this is a screenshot taken from this ad. This shows, this purportedly attempts to tie Donald Trump to Anthony Fauci. However, when you take a closer look at these images, you can see that 3 of these images aren't actually real. They were AI generated. This is a really important challenge because this is the first use that anybody knows of a major American political figure using AI generated or manipulated media in a way that was not very forthright, that had the effect of deceiving the American public. This has happened in a number of other presidential elections. It's also been used to commit fraud, cybercrime, and a number of other new challenges. Now, my lab was able to help identify that these were fake and expose this. However, we can see a new challenge arises. When we have to contend with information from a source that we don't know or might not be able to trust, how do we authenticate it? In the past, we could use approaches like cryptography to protect information attackers from getting into our computers, but this can't help us if we're confronted with information that might not be encrypted or it might be manipulated before encryption. So to address this, researchers like myself have developed a new set of techniques that we call multimedia forensics. The way these algorithms work is we use the fundamental precept of traditional trace-based forensics, that every contact leaves a trace. So if a criminal were to break into your house and try to steal your TV, they would touch the walls, they touch things, they leave behind fingerprints, hair, skin, other forms of evidence that we can use to go back and catch this person. Well, forensic algorithms search for traces left by processing. And a variety of steps used to create or modify an image or video or audio file all involve either physical or algorithmic processing that leaves behind traces. So these are left by the source camera or microphone used to record an image, video, or audio, by editing operations, or generative AI if you're using that to create visually realistic media. So here in my lab, the Multimedia and Information Security Lab, we develop algorithms designed to identify manipulated media, detect and localize fake content, determine its source, and also to expose AI-generated content. So let's look a little bit about how we do this. So how do we find forensic traces? These aren't visible traces, but they're minute statistical relationships between spatially adjacent pixel values. It's a little bit of a mouthful. They're fairly abstract and we can't see them. However, my lab pioneered the approach of using specially designed deep neural networks to automatically learn forensic traces. And here I'll show an example of how we can do this to identify AI-generated images and videos. So over on the left, we can see an AI-generated face made using a technology called StyleGAN2. This was taken from a website called thispersondoesnotexist.com. It'll make realistic fake faces. The bottom 2 are screenshots from video made using OpenAI's Sora and Stable Diffusion's Stable Video Diffusion tool. Now, we designed a specially designed forensic convolutional neural network, a deep neural network that has a specially designed forensic feature extractor that can automatically learn these forensic traces. Now, when you look at images that are AI generated, you'll see here are visualizations of these traces that you'd see from fake images and fake video. They won't show up in a real image, but by using these deep learning tools, we can automatically identify these traces and expose that an image or video isn't real. So next, let's look at kind of more broad image forgeries. So at the right is an image forgery of Jack Nicholson and Leonardo DiCaprio at a baseball game, but it's fake. My lab grabbed this from a website, Reddit Photo Battles. We don't know all of the steps and how this was made. This was made using a photo editing competition, but we can clearly see that when you make an image, you kind of create content, a real image, like a host image, but then you cut out foreign content from another image, maybe captured by another camera. It'll undergo some post-processing to create a visually realistic image forgery. So here, Jack Nicholson, he's been mirrored, his skin tone's corrected, he's probably been resized. We've also, someone has also edited out the woman who's covering up this concrete barrier. So there's a whole sophisticated set of editing operations that you're using to try to identify to try to create a visually realistic forgery. The way we detect these media forgeries is using some sophisticated AI-based forensic analysis we've created in our lab. We've made a special type of neural network that can break up an image into multiple little pieces and get these abstract representations of forensic traces in each piece. Then it compares them to one another and says, are they the same or different? You don't actually have to learn what every possible editing trace is. You're just able to say these two parts are the same, these two parts are different. Then using a bunch of mathematical analysis we call graph theory, or I'm sorry, that we don't call graph theory, a mathematical field called graph theory, we can look at all of these little pieces and see if we can group them into two or more distinct categories, two or more distinct groups. If you can do that, that says part of the image doesn't match with the rest. And then by subsequently analyzing this graph, we can identify that there's fake content in the image without ever having trained on examples of this type of forgery. Now, if we take a closer look at video, video presents some unique challenges. There's a lot of different ways of creating video. It has a time-varying aspect, and there are recent AI-based techniques like deepfakes that create visually convincing video forgeries that a lot of times our image-based analysis can't detect. But we've created specially designed forensic networks that are able to create, expose many different types of video forgeries. And over at the right, you're seeing an example of something we've used to create that does image and video analysis that we've created for the US Department of Defense and is distributed throughout the US government. It's showing in particular an example of Vladimir Zelensky that was a deepfake created by the Russian government right after they invaded Ukraine. So when they invaded Ukraine, they took out the communication systems, or as many as they could, the power grid, roads, bridges, the air system, but they also spread deepfakes of Zelensky saying, throw down your arms, we've been overrun by Russia. So here you can see how fake and manipulated media can be used as information warfare that can aid in real physical warfare. Our tool is able to identify deepfakes like this, as well as a number of other different editing techniques you can use to falsify images and videos. So I'll kind of conclude by talking about this in the broader picture. So AI-based media forensic systems can detect fake media, and this is an important set of tools that we can use to combat fake media used in misinformation and disinformation campaigns, fraud, political disruption, and things like that. However, at the end of the day, technology can only help solve this problem, but we can't solve it entirely by technology. It's fundamentally a human problem. I believe this is one of the great information security problems of our time. We can't use old approaches like cryptography to protect us against information that comes from some source that we don't know and we can't trust. And this is further compounded by how easy it is to make visually convincing media from generative AI. So to address this, we need contributions from many disciplines: law, public policy, psychology, communication, philosophy, and ethics. Right here at Drexel, we have scholars from multiple fields already looking at this problem from a multidisciplinary perspective. Drexel's identified AI and problems that arise from AI as one of our areas of expertise and excellence. Areas of opportunity and excellence. We're growing a multidisciplinary community to address this problem. And we also have courses on this that we teach at the undergraduate and graduate level here at Drexel. So with that, that kind of concludes my talk. Thank you very much, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Matt, for that great presentation. I also am going to applaud all our presenters for sticking to the time limits. So far, you've been great. Of course, I'm going to invite all our participants to ask questions in the chat if you'd like. I'll kick things off just with one you kind of alluded to, Matt, already, which is I'm sure not the only one who noticed sort of the irony of using AI to detect AI, right? And that, will this forever be a game of cat and mouse, of one technology sort of leapfrogging the other, or are there greater long-term solutions to this? And I think you pointed to the multidisciplinary kind of collaboration that's needed. I mean, do you have a particular sort of end goal in sight for that, or kind of, a utopian, utopia is the wrong word, but just sort of a possible solution, right, to manage this problem, which is obviously exploding right now, whether it's in campaigns or in other forms of misinformation?
So I don't think that in the near term, there is some easy fix-all solution. In fact, I think what we're seeing is the emergence of a new type of security problem that we haven't seen before. In the past, we were looking at challenges where someone could listen into our communication, somebody could get access to files on our computer or see secret messages. And what we did was we developed cryptography, that this kind of has its underpinnings, its formal underpinnings in the 1940s. It was studied before then, but we came up with a mathematical framework to kind of rigorously analyze this. And then from that, we have a whole bunch of other research and policy, ethics, things like that that underpin this. What we're seeing right now is a new security problem. It doesn't fit into the crypto framework. And I think we're going to see a new both technological, theoretical framework emerge, as well as new kind of approaches from philosophy, ethics, public policy that are going to crystallize over the next few years. And hopefully here at Drexel, we can help take a leadership role in doing that.
Thanks, Matt. Let's see, we do have a couple of questions in the chat. Let's see, Michael asked, were the ad images created from, in your Trump example, that from the DeSantis campaign, were those created by the campaign or sourced from other sources?
Those were created by the campaign. So if you go, I can kind of mouse back to my, on my slides to the original image, you can see there were a number of, we were involved in helping with this reporting, but you can see links to two different news stories. Reuters, New York Times, AFP, a bunch of these covered this, but this was unfortunately released by the DeSantis campaign, the official campaign. But we've seen this happen in many other countries before this. And I should also mention, I don't think this is bounded by any particular political affiliation. When there's an opportunity for people to gain by misleading people, we'll see large groups of people do this.
Right. Let's see, Heather asked, are your tools or perhaps other tools used by social media platforms to verify such posts?
Currently, no. We are developing more sophisticated tools with the US government, and as they become more scalable, we're working to kind of expand out how this is used. But the way you can kind of think about this is you may want to think about analyzing media like a crime scene, right? You wouldn't automatically just have one machine or person just click a button and look at everything in a crime scene. You need a specialist who looks at fingerprints with specialized equipment, and another person who looks at DNA, another person who looks at many different traces. Right now, we're in very early stages of this research where we need a group of specialized tools and highly skilled analysts to authenticate media. However, we're rapidly progressing to a point where we may be able to do this at scale and help work with social media companies and other stakeholders analyze large amounts of media that you may encounter.
All right, we're going to finish up with an easy question, which is, do you find synthetic data ethically problematic? I was kidding. That is not an easy question. But if you want to comment on it.
I think the answer is no and yes. Undisclosed synthetic media or just information at all can cause massive problems when it's misused. But we can use generative AI for a number of purposes. So if you look at a number of creative approaches, in the past, if you want to make an image or a movie or something like that, you needed a tremendous amount of equipment, skill, expertise. But now if you have a great idea, you can bring that to life using generative AI technologies to create a score. In the very near future, video, you can create audio, things like that, right? So you can use this to do really wonderful, powerful things. You can also misuse it. Maybe the last thing I'll say, I'll steal someone else's analogy. You can think of it like a car. Cars aren't good or bad. You can use them for really great purposes to drive you around, but you can also use them to hit people. So the ethics aren't in the technology, it's in the driver.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Matt Stam. Incredible work that you're doing, and thanks for the comments here from our audience. Take a look at those if you haven't already. All right. So in the interest of time, we're going to present our third presentation. So as I mentioned, not all innovation is centered around a technical problem or technology, right? There are myriad challenges: local, community, national, global. And I'm very, very pleased to introduce you to someone who is taking on these challenges at so many levels. Please welcome, to talk about food and land security in Philadelphia community-based learning courses and the Unmapping Project. He's an associate teaching professor of Spanish and an associate dean for diversity, equity, and inclusion in the College of Arts and Sciences. Please welcome Dr. Steve Dolph.
Thank you so much, Youngmoo. Thank you so much, Kelly, for inviting us to this talk. And thank you, Youngmoo, for your wonderful introductions. I'm going to share my screen. All right. Start the timer. So this talk is going to be quite a bit different from the two that preceded this one. But I want to present a challenge to you. The challenge is that the image that you are looking at is itself also a learning technology. The idea of our programs is to think with the land about these questions that were presented at the introduction: food and land security, specifically in our city. I'm going to start with this simplified version of the problem that we are addressing, which is in fact threefold. In Philadelphia, 1 in 6 families is food insecure. This food insecurity is linked to historical segregation, disinvestment, and was exacerbated by the COVID-19 pandemic. Specifically, among children in families, that food insecurity, which is the lack of reliable access to affordable, nutritious food, is closer to 1 in 3, right? 1 in 3 children in Philadelphia, on average, is food insecure. So this is the sociological or epidemiological problem that we are looking at in our city, and coupled with a problem that we're facing in universities. We recently had a visit from the Surgeon General as part of a national tour to address what he calls an epidemic, or what's called in the literature an epidemic of loneliness. This loneliness epidemic is particularly acute in universities. Let me just escape here. This chat's not for me, is it? Questions? Thank you so much, Youngmoo, for fielding those questions. Recent studies have shown that in universities, 4 out of 10 students regularly report feeling loneliness, a sense of social isolation. We know that this social isolation was exacerbated by the COVID-19 pandemic and the lockdown situations, particularly in our schools, but it's a long-standing issue. My work as an educator looks to address this kind of social issue at the citywide level, alongside a loneliness issue within our own population of students. So we're working with community members and students to think about the ways we can create connection and address a social problem. We begin always with groundwork. Our groundwork is situating the history of urban agriculture within a Black intellectual history, not just in Philadelphia, but across the Eastern United States. We are housed, our program, within global studies and environmental studies, but our home is in the writer's room. That's where we begin all of our work. It's our meeting space, and it really grounds our teaching practice in storytelling. One of the things that we really work to push against in our coursework is this idea that urban agriculture is a kind of hobbyist's pursuit, when in reality, the work is practiced as a kind of social justice by growers, promoters, and policymakers here in our city. Once the groundwork is established, we need to establish a intellectual framework that we're working through to teach this work. Our framework that we use is what's called Milpa, a ancient system of agriculture that we translate and transform into an educational system. You might know it as the Three Sisters if you're yourself a gardener. It's the interface or interaction of three crops, corn, beans, and squash, that are mutually beneficial and that in the field have a kind of biological, botanical, ecological, and also historical cultural relationship to each other. Indigenous people have been using these crops not just to create sustainable food systems, but to organize land tenure, social structure, and even religious practice for thousands of years. We translate this agricultural system, the Three Sisters, what in Spanish we call Milpa, into a teaching system. Our coursework challenges the conventional understanding of what knowledge production can and should mean. Our coursework is collaborative, it's embodied, it engages emotion, ancestral knowledge, and it's more than anything else, community-based and land-based work. Our students are pushed to think of the objects that they are holding, purple whole peas, an important food in African-American cultural foodways here in Philadelphia. They're pushed to think of these foods as a kind of knowledge that's encased within these pods. These foods contain genetic material that is the result of hundreds of years of knowledge being passed on from person to person. The food you're looking at here is another example of the work that we do, the seed keeping work that we teach our students with our community educators. You might recognize it as okra, the food that is the sort of substantive base of many foods, including, of course, gumbo. For us, this food is a representation of the connections between distinct but also interwoven diasporic communities. Western African diasporic, Caribbean diasporic, and Mesoamerican or Indigenous American communities. Okra is also an important crop in South Asian foods. What's important for us here is we use the botany of this plant. It's part of the Malva or mallow family to make connections with other foodways, other traditional foodways. The mallow family also includes cotton, an African crop, and hibiscus flowers, a really important food, a medicinal food in Indigenous American foodways. Whenever we are thinking about Indigenous food practices, Indigenous cultural practices, we have to negotiate this question of the sacred. How do we bring students into what our community partners consider a sacred practice of food production and cultural preservation in ways that are responsible? We do this by introducing our students to caretaking and aesthetic work around foodways. Most food work is not actually about producing food. It's about engaging in a reverential relationship with the lands that sustain us. And so we invite students to participate in this work through art making. One of the things that we try to push back against is the hubris of environmental science with the reverence of traditional ecological knowledge. We try to push back against the market logic of that predominates the food system with a circular logic that shapes relationship-driven food practices in Philadelphia. This is work that results in thinking of food production, food consumption, and circulation as a kind of healing arts. And this is how our community partners think of their work, and we invite students to participate in this way. Ultimately, this educational practice, this low-tech educational practice is about meaning making and about decentralizing expertise away from a single individual or a single methodology towards the collective. This image that you see here, there's no instructor. I'm on the outside. Our community experts are also on the outside of this circle. The process of meaning making is distributed across many different people, many different backgrounds. You can see in this picture that there are many different ages, nationalities, genders, all represented to create collective meaning. At the end of the day, this work is about celebration and ceremony. We want to emphasize that for us, for food recovery, food justice, food sovereignty work, culture is the key. Culture is the fundamental technology for a just food system, not just now, but into the future. Thank you all so very much.
Thank you, Steve, for sharing the breadth of your work. And again, you know, the tying together how our experiential learning aspects are not at all just in terms of one mode of thinking, that really we are providing a really broad range of experiences for our students. Certainly, of course, we'll invite everyone to pop some questions in the chat if you would like. I mean, maybe I'll kick things off again. Steve, I know you talked about how Writers' Room is the home for a lot of your activities. Maybe if you could just expand a little bit about what Writers' Room is and the kind of role it plays for Drexel students and in the community.
I really appreciate you bringing that back, Youngmoo. I'm going to put in the chat here a link to the project that this course is sponsored by, the Unmapping project of the Writers' Room. I say that the Writers' Room is our home, not just because our classes take place there, but because it's our spiritual focus as a learning community. All of our coursework, whether it's land-based or classroom-based, is focused around storytelling, which is why I always take my community-based learning students there to engage with storytelling as the central practice, whether it's cultural studies, environmental studies, or civic engagement work. We always begin in the Writers' Room because we follow the sort of mission statement of the Writers' Room that everything begins with story. And that's what we believe in our coursework.
I mean, again, I was not a student at Drexel in the 80s, which is where we started today with, but I do think we can highlight for our alums and for our participants here, right? Educational practice does not stay static, right? And a lot of us might have, you know, college or K-12 experiences, right? A lot of those practices have evolved, fundamentally changed. The tools have changed, obviously, with things like technology, but also with the kinds of experiences and partnerships that we have locally and globally as well. Steve, I know you've been involved with some international work as well. Do you care to comment on that too?
Sure. So this course that that I highlighted today is part of a suite of courses that I've developed in partnership with not just local, but as you say, global organizations. We have a partnership with an organization in Puerto Rico to bring students into an immersive experience around agroecology and disaster recovery in Puerto Rico. We take students there for a 10-day what we call an intensive course abroad, or ICA, that brings them as close as possible to this experience because they're living it day in and day out, 24 hours a day for 10 days. This kind of experience gives students time and space to really immerse themselves, again, not just intellectually, but emotionally, physically, within the kinds of learning. One of the things that we try to really emphasize is that a piece that tends to get left behind in classroom work is the affective, with an A, affect piece of learning. We tend to sometimes overemphasize the intellectual or cerebral piece to the detriment of the learning that happens through the body.
Thanks for that additional description. Certainly, I've heard from so many students who participated in the ICAs, the intensive courses abroad, right? How transformative an experience that can be, right? It is truly, it can be whether mindset changing, life changing, and again, but they're an enormous amount of work. Also, I know for you and others to put together. So it's just this wonderful. And somebody wrote the comment here. It's kind of immersion schools. Yeah, absolutely. To give people that full immersion experience. Learning happens in so many different settings, in so many different ways. So, and maybe that's just one of the themes that I'll highlight for that links all of our presentations today. I know we're just about at time. I invite anyone if wants to throw in a last second question for any of our speakers, we could try to squeeze it in. But I also wanted to take this moment to thank all of our presenters, just 3 amazing, amazing presentations that are just the surface of what's happening at Drexel University today. Right, we picked some, of course, shining stars, great examples, but there are so many more ways where Drexel faculty, Drexel academic units are pushing the boundaries of what we know and what is possible, and trying to give our students the best possible experience, whether that's at the undergraduate or graduate level. All right. Well, thanks again to our presenters. Thank you, Kelly and the Alumni Relations Office, for putting this together. Thank you, audience. Thank you, participants, for being here. We really appreciate your time and your attention. And please don't hesitate to follow up if you have any more questions or would like more information about any of this work. Thanks. Kelly, do you want to wrap things up?
I'll echo that, Youngmoo. Thank you everyone for joining. Thank you to our presenters. I know I'm feeling the Drexel Dragon Pride. I hope you all are as well. As I mentioned at the offset, we will be sharing this recording. So feel free to share it and continue to celebrate. And hopefully we'll see some of you on campus this weekend for Alumni Weekend. All right, thanks everyone.